Yo, what's up? Dr. Swole here, MD Pro Physique Athlete. Today I'm joined by Dr. Mike Israetel, and we have the collab of the century because we're going to be talking about dating today.
What are we doing? Good God, help us
Thanks for
all.
joining me. Thanks for joining me, Mike.
Thanks for having me on, man. It's good to be on.
This is going to be a unique conversation, and ultimately, our goal here is that we want to be helping our brothers out there in the audience just to level up your life in general. I think that dating and relationships are a huge aspect of happiness in general, and it's something that people don't really pay a lot of attention to, and something that we are going to help you out with.
Our goal with this here is basically pretty straightforward, and there's a lot more to say, but it's something like, we're definitely not doing a few things. We're not, there are no tricks to be offered here. No tricks at all. We're not trying to advocate that you try to get something from girls that they're not interested in giving you. And we are not going to be advocating bending the truth or lying in pursuit of girls at all. We just want to help anyone who listens, all the three people that end up hearing this. We want to give you guys some general ideas and maybe some specific tips if this goes beyond a single collab episode of kind of one thing really, and it's just how to put your best foot forward in social settings in which attraction and females are involved on dates, of course, but also in group hangouts, co-ed group hangouts where some single folks exist. This also applies to chats and online dating. You wouldn't believe how many times you see someone's DMs with a girl and you're like, did you go to school to learn the opposite of what to say to people so that they hate you? And they're like, well, I just thought I was doing my best. Okay, you don't know things. And so if we zoom in to dates, which is going to be a lot of what we talk about. Not all interactions like this happen on dates, but specifically on dates is a very, very interesting microcosm. We're going to try to clamp down on the idea that the mission of every date is kind of only really one thing, maybe two. One is have a good time and behave in such a way as maximizes her good time as well. And that seems like it's a problem. It seems like we didn't think it through. It seems like if we were being totally honest, the purpose of every date is to end up in the presence of a lot of sexual activity that is consensual and enjoyable. But that idea that the mission of a given date is to try to get laid or setting up getting laid is already stepping on a landmine. Not in terms of how it'll be perceived by the public or the person you're going on a date with. It already extends our foot into a theoretical dead end branch. And I'd love to emphasize or explain how it does that. Should I do that now? Or do we want to save that for later? What do you think?
Let's hear it. Let's just get into it.
Yeah. All right. So thinking of dating and a given date as an opportunity to try to get in bed with someone is the wrong way to think about it because of at least two things. One is it's really not up to you. It's up to the other person. And you can't force people to do things. The other big deal is that the very energy you channel, and I don't mean energy in some woo-woo psychic way. I mean your body language, your tone of voice, the things you say, the flow of conversation, how you react to things, is going to take on a certain kind of vibe when you're trying to get something, specifically the thing between her legs. And the demonstration that you're trying to get it is in this very curious way, and there's one of the reasons why there's so much confusion about this topic. The demonstration of trying to get it, which is to say, let's say sexual relations, that you demonstrate that need, that desire, that want. That very want, need, and desire is illustrating something that in a given context is unattractive about you. It's like someone who claims to have millions of dollars pushing a 5-year-old girl out of the way to pick up a quarter that fell on the mall. You say you have a lot of money, but you're not acting like it. And so if you're trying to maximize the probability, even in the back of your mind, to get fucking laid, using that as an explicit organizing principle for going on dates is really, really shooting yourself in the foot, because it extends your personality. It illustrates the frame that you're in to the female, that you need this thing called sex. And as we'll get to in a little bit, neediness is absolutely one of the least attractive things that you could ever portray to a female. Any corrections? You'll have to do, I'm sure, a lot of them. Well, what am I saying wrong? What do I have right? What do you think about all that?
No, I love that. I think that this is a very core issue where guys get up to the wrong foot where they're trying to get something. And I think dating is a very unique, it's counterintuitive in a lot of ways, because as guys, we tend to be very logical. We think, A plus B equals C, do this, get this. And they're like, well, if I want to have this girl and, have the night go well, I thus must be pressing all these buttons and, trying too hard ultimately. And what that ends up doing is it turns everybody off. And you have to think of it, it's kind of like getting a cat to like you. You can't run after the cat when you've just met them, saying like, come here, kitty, come here, kitty. It's just going to bolt. You've got to play it cool. You got to hang out and let the cat warm up to you. And it takes time for that to happen. And you have to convey that personality. And what you were saying about how our intentions end up controlling our behavior to many, a very deep extent. And this is something that women are very finely attuned to. In fact, often much better than men in terms of our, nonverbal cues. And they can spot that from a mile away. They can spot desperation or neediness from a mile away. And I think that changing your initial mindset, where you as a man, ultimately the most masculine trait is being focused on your mission, having a purpose in life, and being purpose driven is essentially a very masculine trait to have. And when you lean into that, you will end up attracting women to you because they sense that energy. And that, by definition, is a non-needy frame. Whereas if your mindset is my ultimate goal, like trying to get the girl is my ultimate goal, you are subverting your masculine purpose.
100%. And trying to get the girl is, to me, a similar kind of goal as trying to win a competition. Let's say in bodybuilding. You actually can't, if you think it through remotely, you can't try to win a competition. That is impossible, because it's not up to you. It's actually just up to the judges. And it highly depends on the dynamic of how you look and how other folks on stage that showed up that day look. So your goal logically can and should only be, I want to develop and present my physique to the best of my abilities. And then it will be judged and decided. So the same logic works in, I'm trying to make sure that this date gets me laid. Nope, not up to you. But what can be somewhat up to you is the thing that gets you laid. Just like getting ripped and jacked wins bodybuilding shows more often than not. Developing a frame which is attractiveness inducing in females. If you can get a female to be attracted to you, not is very easily said, not as easily done, but relatively straightforward, then the probability that you're getting laid is fucking really high. But you can find out, you reach out to get a get laid cookie. It doesn't exist there. There's no such thing. Just like you can't run up on a bodybuilding stage, grab the trophy and run off. The fuck? Prejudging starting in an hour. Can someone catch that guy and get our trophy back? It's not something that you can aim for. And the idea that you can aim for it is both very masculine, in the sense of like you said, guys are very mission oriented. This, I do this, I get that. With this sort of thing, there are a couple of degrees of removal of behavior that gets you the higher probability of that distant action, but it can't just be A to B. And there's a very, very good reason why it can't be A to B. When I first started thinking about these things and reading about it a little, I was like, women are fucking irrational And just what the fuck? Because one of the first ways you find out about this is you realize that, like, okay, if you act like you don't like a girl, the probability she's liking you increases versus if you act like you like her. And to me, at one point I realized this. I was like, okay, this is just an insane person. And then you realize most women are like that. You go, women are fucking insane, but they're not insane. And like you said earlier, Bill, the female intuitive wisdom about this is, like, to males as good as artificial superintelligence. It's way beyond our realm in most cases to intuit right off the bat. So it seems to us that women are judging males based on some kind of strange, contradictory mystery quality, but they're not. It's in some sense better than that because it's logical. But in some sense, and I don't want to paint this as a worse, but I'll just use the funny word, worse than that. Because in reality, women can tell how attractive you are in ways you didn't consent to revealing, in ways you didn't even know you were revealing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a trippy thought. With guys, it is profoundly more difficult to conceal what women are really looking for. You might not even know what you're putting off as far as signs. You don't know what they're looking for, and then no fucking wonder you haven't gotten laid in a while or haven't been as successful. You've been playing the wrong game. The game was over here, and it was tennis, and you've been playing baseball against a fucking wall that way, and you're like, well, how come I'm not winning? You're playing the wrong game to begin with. And I think that's a big point. And of course, just in a little bit, we can get into kind of the theory of, well, what is it that women find attractive, and what can I do about it? What of that did I get wrong? What can you add to that?
Yeah, I think that a lot of this can be explained through the evolutionary lens, and this is a big field of interest of mine. And I think that it's something that everyone should read a little bit about, because this is something we didn't talk about earlier. But when you understand interactions in dating, it applies to everything in your life. It applies to your interactions with friends, family, your boss. And I think this kind of knowledge is important for everyone. Ultimately, when you think about it in terms of what you were saying, of how girls are very intuitive. And I think people don't realize how good girls are at seeing through your BS. Where guys are like, oh yeah, I'm gonna flex about my job and how much money I make and all my accomplishments. But if you think about it, women throughout millennia have been lied to by men trying to get something from them.
Oh
And
yeah.
the girls who couldn't figure that out would have ended up with the loser. So it has evolved over millennia for women to be able to pick up on very, very fine cues, things that very fine aspects of your body language, the way you talk, the way you hold yourself, the way you talk about yourself and others, the way you interact with her, that is very difficult for you to get around by, explicating, talking about your accomplishments as a showing
Yes.
off your CV.
Yes. The the trippy thing about this, there are tons of analogies to draw in both directions with both sexes, and the logic is very different, but the analogies make a ton of sense when you think about it. And I have one to share that I think is something that we can kind of promise to lead you on the path on, at least beginning in this episode of this podcast. Look, if this goes on, if this goes over pretty well, I'll be back on. If not, you'll never see me again. It'll be great because I'll just shut up and be by myself. But what is what is it that we are telling you we might be able to hook you up with? Where is this knowledge going to lead? What it's not going to do is, we're not going to tell you things to say in every situation. That's fucking insane. That's impossible. Combinatorial nightmare. We definitely don't claim to know it all. I have fucking dick fucking game. I have terrible game, but I am very fully aware of when I have terrible game, and I know exactly why it's terrible. And I've done it to a lot of people. I've been on lots of dates that went fucking terribly wrong, hangouts, etc. So I'm at least going to be able to tell you guys, but definitely don't do that. And you have a very excellent theoretical understanding. I'm not going to prop up your game, but you're kind of the fucking man. People sort of know about that. I won't say anything. Any more flame fanning of that will just look like a demonstration of lower value. So on your behalf. But in any case, you know what you're talking about. I'll just leave it at that. Lots and lots of experience. So what is it that we can provide for you? And it's this, and I'm going to say it by analogy, because straight up, it's like, what? That's it? We're going to be able to provide you with a framework of how to see social interactions that allows you to see the map of the course, to see the puzzle pieces, and maybe do a little bit of a better job every other few weeks that you go on dates of fitting them together. And then eventually, when you can build the whole puzzle relatively well, you can be the person that says and does and acts like way more of the right shit than the wrong shit. Nobody's perfect. I have plenty of dumb shit. But even how you react to dumb shit that you just said on a date is part of how the right puzzle pieces form. That's what we can give you and enhance your probability of having better interactions. Of course, like you said, with all people, but definitely with people you're sexually interested in, so that if they were remotely interested in you in any other capacity, the probability that they're going to become attracted to you rises substantially. The better you get at living this kind of frame, the more it rises. So, theory. The first question here is, what do girls consider attractive generally? Now, a couple of caveats. Individual differences are massive. Some girls like some of the stuff. Some girls could never notice it. Some girls, the most valuable thing in the world to them is something that'll never make our list. We have no idea what it's about. However, on average, girls tend to be more attracted to these things than repulsed by them. And I can think of a few. There are definitely more. This is not an inclusive list. Income. This is empirically validated. I don't know if you know this, but they have regression models from the dating sites that show, like, for any given other general characteristics of attractiveness you have, how much income you'd have to go up by to make those not a thing anymore. And it's literally just a numbers thing. So, like, if a man has an annual income of over $1 million, you could just get away with a lot of stuff. And income here, it's not so much that you're attracting just people who are insanely short-sighted and gold diggers. You'll get those too, for sure. But income here means that, I'll get to this part much more in a bit, it's a status indicator. It's a huge interaction with status. So income is number one. These are not ranked in order, by the way. Second thing is status. What does status mean? Status means that females are more likely to be attracted to males that are somewhere up in the upper part of the totem pole in any situation or organization in which they happen to be. So let's say that you're the captain of the wrestling team and a girl finds out one of two things about you. One, you're on the wrestling team, or two, you're the captain of the wrestling team. Captain sounds so damn good. And if she doesn't know what wrestling even is, that's that weird sport where people touch each other, that's all I know about it. But she knows you're good at something. And status means other people look up to you, other people know about you, and you're talked about in ways that mean that you're worthwhile somehow. You're better than average somehow. That's what status means. And we'll say a lot more about it because it's really, really big deal. Another one that comes up is height. Now, the thing is about income, you can change over time by investing yourself and working and getting an education, scaling up businesses. Height, I don't know what you're supposed to do about it. I'm 5'6". How tall are you, Bill, if you want to be public with that sort of thing?
I'm 6 feet.
6 feet. You got the long end of the stick on that one. Can't change height. Doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. So it's just something you're going to have to deal with. Now, like if you want to go to Korea and get the leg extending surgery and get the 2 years of recovery going, God bless you. But height is something we can't really do anything about. Something you can do something about, but on our respective media, as we talk about incessantly, is to get a lean V-tapered body. It's not a huge thing with girls, and guys usually overvalue. how much physical attractiveness matters, but it does. Like if your shoulders are up here and your waist is down there and it all streamlines in, even 1950s man, with just a business suit, like, man, same, but he's got the wider shoulders, narrow waist, that is damn near good enough for all girls. So if you have a body shape that's narrow shoulders and wider waist than shoulders as a male, yeah, getting to a lean V-tapered body is going to pay really, really big dividends. Obviously, there's good looks. Handsome is a reality. It's a thing. And can you do something about it? I mean, short of losing weight so that you get your facial fat down and get the cheekbones going, and short of, I guess, massively invasive surgery, not really. So it's one of those things we're going to push aside. Like, we can't help you become more handsome on a podcast. Sure, shit, not in our wheelhouse. And another one that finishes my list of what girls consider attractive, again, there are many more things, is, are you a good conversationalist? Which can mean a bunch of things, but it at least means two things often. One is, are you interesting to talk to? And two, are you funny? You don't have to be ha-ha clown funny, but even a little giggle, even a little clever thing every now and again. You get girls laughing, you're in something pretty decent. What do you think about those? What did I miss? Am I overvaluing any of those, or did I misestimate any of those?
I like it. I think that this topic actually is massive. This is a very core aspect of what Mike and I are going to be talking about, because I think that the most important thing, if you want to be successful in your dating life, is yourself, leveling up yourself, and knowing how to approach this is going to be key. So the way that I typically approach this is, you can view a man's value in 4 major categories. People typically talk about this as looks, money, status, and game. That's kind of what's been named before. I kind of broaden it out to say looks/fitness, money and career, your status and your social circle, and your personality in general, to broaden those categories out. And so basically going from the top, under the looks category, obviously fitness, what you said, height, just your facial features in general. And this is a lot of this I want to put in the context of how a lot of this is very individual for women. Obviously different girls are going to find different things attractive. So it's not like there's a certain combination that's going to be the best, but obviously there are going to be better combinations for like most girls or more girls.
Yes.
And then in terms of money in your career, that's obviously, as you said, going to be important. And you can look at this from the evolutionary standpoint of, if the girl is in the savannah, you got the guy who has the whole herd of cattle versus the guy who has nothing. You'd want to pick one where you're going to be more likely that you and your offspring are going to survive with, and
100%.
resources are going to play a huge role in that. And
something to say really quick, if you don't mind. I think the women being attracted to money gets a bad rap, and I'll tell you how. Women being attracted to money, some guys frame as just being shallow. There's more to humans than money. And of course that's true. There's so much more to humans than money. But it's not the money per se that they can go buy a purse that most women are attracted to. And it's not fake. It's not Machiavellian. They're not like, oh, he has a big bank account. Let me lie to him about liking him so I can get in there. There are, of course, women like that, but those are the sociopathic 1% of all humans that will do whatever it is they need to get what they get. Women's attraction to income, and not income itself, high income earners, is real and felt. It is inherent. Mm-hmm. It is as real and felt as a guy who looks at a beautiful woman's face. If a girlfriend of yours was walking with you and you like turned and looked at a girl, she's like, what is it about her that you like? Well, I thought she was pretty. Like, well, that's like really just shallow. And you're like, well, yeah, but it feels real to me. I feel like I really want to keep looking at her face. I think she's actually beautiful. I don't think it's some mask or facade she's putting on. I'm not pretending I like her for her looks. It's a real thing I really feel. And women, in the sense of being attracted to income, they're not like calculating sociopath, like, oh, he's got more money than he wins. It's not that. It's when you say, well, I am a medical doctor and I do have a practice. They're like, oh, it's a feeling, a real evolutionarily designed feeling of this is a person who has providence. Out from him resources flow. And none of that's logical at all. It's truly and deeply felt. And thus it's kind of a little lame to write off women that are interested in income and attracted by it as like, well, you're just money grubbing and you're, would you tell a guy who's interested in dating a supermodel, like, well, you're just superficial? Like, well, I like pretty girls. What do you want me to do, man? I really do like her. I'm not lying about it. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, I'm in agreement. I think there's nothing wrong with women being attracted to wealth. And the other thing to keep in mind here is that these categories run a little bit deeper, where it isn't necessarily the dollar amount that a person has, but a lot of it is the traits or the giveaways or the telltale signs that girls see more so in your personality that actually links into these. So for example, under the career and money category, ambition is actually is basically synonymous with that category. And that's why women are so attracted to a man who's ambitious and who has a purpose and who has drive, because those ultimately are intertwined and they're interleaved in terms of the evolutionary signals that they're giving off, where
Yes.
you, especially when you're dealing, if you're young, like if you're a young guy, young girls dating each other, you haven't had the time to accrue all those actual resources. But I mean, Elon Musk, when he was 20, was still Elon Musk.
Yes. Elon Musk, when he was 20, if you went on a date with him, the drive, the vision, the fact that, let's say you're dating someone who's in a PhD in like microchip design, and they're just so passionate about it, it gives a different feeling to girls than a date you went on where you realize the guy that you're on a date with is inheriting a $10 million fortune, but he's like just like a marijuana smoking degenerate loser that just doesn't get out of bed most days, and he showed up to the date with like cat hair and pasta on his shirt, and you're like, okay, like someone's like, hey, this guy's your friend, just like Betsy, she's like, hey Aaron, this guy's rich, you should go after him. You're like, oh, I'm sorry, what? I don't someone made money in his life, sure shit wasn't him. And if when he loses it, what the hell am I going to do about it? Send him out to go looking for work with cat hair and spaghetti stains on his shirt? It's a different vibe. And to your point exactly, it's more about, do you have it in you to generate wealth rather than do you have wealth? Now, a lot of the people who have wealth got it because they have what it takes. And so it's difficult to disentangle the two. And of course, any more income, everything else being equal, is good, but it's less about the explicit amount of money that you have or make, and more about, are you demonstrating the kinds of behaviors and attitudes and ambitions that will inevitably result, no matter what environment you're put into marginally more success than less success.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, these categories have a lot of nuance to them, and I think it's important for guys to realize that it's not just about a superficial number or stamp that you have on your resume. Sure. So yeah, and then going on the other categories, so status and social circle. This is, yeah, you nailed it. It's basically your rank, and the important thing to know about status, as you mentioned, is that it's very situational. This is something that guys get wrong because they think that you have to be Drake to be, popular. But
universally popular.
Yeah, that there are girls who will be attracted to you if you have a high degree of status in any endeavor in the world. Even if you are a professional gamer, there are going to be gamer girls who are going to be into you. If you
gamer girls, say no more.
And yeah, so that's the thing, is that you can be successful in any realm, and there are going to be girls who are in that realm who are going to be attracted to you because of that status. And if you think about it from the evolutionary context, the power of status is that it can translate into a lot of other tangible benefits, where when you have status, you have safety, you have control over resources, and that's actually a major thing. Status and money are closely linked. And you also have a lot of social power, so you'll get a lot of support. You may have friends, and that's something that this gets conveyed in many ways. Status is a very nuanced category, but I will say that out of all the categories, ultimately status is actually the highest one. is the most powerful one. It's something that people don't realize, but it conveys a lot more and goes a lot deeper than the other categories and has the highest potential for, leveling up.
Yes, the highest potential for change. I mean, like you're not going to grow 4 inches. That's nonsense. But you can re-architect the status that you project out into the world to a significant extent. Just want to add something just for intellectual clarity or intellectual edification. There are some pretty animalistic, maybe you could say them as darker sides of what status indicates. One of the things that status indicates to females is, as a male, based on how you act, they could develop a feeling for your status. And the way they do it is to watch your body language and verbal language and facial language. And the reason that betrays your status is because the things that architect, other than genetics, of course, and a few other variables, the things that architect how you portray your status largely, not exclusively, largely include how have you managed to do in male on male confrontations in your history. If I'm a random girl that just pops in, remember, all of us in evolutionary history, all humans are just AI large language models trying to make sense of the situations they're in. There was no Google back in the day. There was no perfect information. For the love of God, there wasn't even language for a long time, just these kinds of physical things. A guy comes up to you and he wants to kind of, do stuff, maybe start a family, who knows? How do you tell if he has won most of his historical confrontations for dominance and status, which were physical in nature through largely most of our history, neutral, or lost? Well, if a person has lost a lot of physical confrontations over their timeline, let's say lost more than they've won, they have trouble looking up. Their head automatically swivels down. They have trouble looking you in the eyes, because if you look an attractive woman in the eyes, as a matter of fact, if you look at her at all, other males that are always around, we evolved in very small tribal groups, they could notice that. And they don't want you to talk to her because that's their girl. Now, she doesn't belong to them, but they're going to teach you later with their fists who she belongs to. If you are the kind of person that got bullied a lot, whose status in their own mind has declined because of, now in modern society, mostly not physical confrontations, but kind of any kind of indicator of status, how you behave is, to use exceedingly mathematical language, an integrator, an integral function of how much status you've accrued. And that bleeds through everything you do. She can tell if you're a winner. She can tell if you're a loser. She can tell how far up the spectrum that is. She can tell if you're somewhere neutral and can't quite figure you out. But the status thing conveys not only your proximate ability to get resources going or get decision-making status in your tribe going, but also how have you done over the course of your life so far in status seeking, status revealing confrontations with other people and other members of also the alpha male candidacy group in your tribe. And the answer is like, yeah, that stuff that speaks. What does Jordan Peterson say? Like, well, you got to get your spine straight and walk with your head up. And he's not saying that by accident. That is the body language of a winner. It's the body language of winner in primate interactions. In squirrels do the same thing. So with humans, she can tell if you've won most of your fist fights when you were in the 3rd grade or lost most of them. She can tell that when you're 19 years old. How? It's how you're acting. So status isn't just some Machiavellian construction in the modern era. It's a thing that goes back all through evolutionary history. And I'm not just saying that just to wax nostalgic about it. It's so deep in her detection mechanisms and ultra subconscious. And it's so deep in your own behaviors that you don't even control. You have to rewind the brain that far to go, oh, wow, this is really core, bottom of the firmament kind of stuff. It's not peppered on top. This isn't makeup. This is transforming who you really are kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I think that guys don't realize the power of body language and the power of how you carry yourself. For example, well, let's tell a story about our imaginary hero, Brad. He goes on a
Brad,
date
I love Brad,
with this beautiful Ukrainian girl who just moved to North America. She barely speaks a word of English. and they actually meet in a nightclub. So it's very loud. All they can do is dance a little bit together, try and yell a couple of jokes to each other's ears, and they end up going on a date, and it goes great. They, have a great time at his place at the end of the night, and afterwards she calls him king and says that I see you as my king, even though they barely have been able to connect through language. She barely speaks English. She knows vaguely what he does, but she's never been to his workplace. She's never talked to she's never even talked to his friends or the people that he works with. She doesn't know how much money is in his bank account, but she intuitively knows from the way that he carries himself. And she tells it to him. I feel this energy in you that tells me that you are a king. And she knows that he ultimately has that status. And I think that this will ultimately culminate later on as we get deeper in, where all of these different categories of the looks, money, status, and your personality all come together ultimately to produce the way you carry yourself. Some people will call that frame.
Yes. Can you talk a little bit more about the personality side of it? What did we miss on the personality side? What's in that box?
Yeah, so that one's very complex. I mean, you can break it down into a lot of different aspects, but a lot of this will be very contextual to the girl that you are talking to, but a few of them would be, first of all, is the way you interact, and like how comfortable are you with interacting with people in general, and girls, beautiful girls, people in general. That says a lot about you, how relaxed you are, how good your social skills are in general. I think that is something that's kind of underrated in this kind of niche, where people think that getting along with girls is some kind of special script that's carried in this bound leather book that is completely different from anything else you would do in the rest of your life. But a lot of this is just general social skills. Like, are you a chill guy to get along with?
Yeah.
And, just learning how to just hang out and be a good dude goes a long ways, honestly.
Yes. And the good news is most conversations of this nature, this is maybe something you guys listening have heard from actual girls, like, just be cool. And you're like, I don't know what that means. Damn it. We will tell you over the course of time, hopefully a bit today and maybe a bit later. There is a lot to say about what that's like, because it's so easy to say, well, just be chill or just be that guy. It's like if you're a girl and you're asking your male friend, like, what do you see in Emily? And he's just like, I don't know, she just got it. Like, all right, thanks, Frank. Thanks for nothing. This doesn't give me anything to go on. We do have an understanding, at least somewhat, of what it means to be chill, to be cool, to present high status. And even the words we use have wisdom in them. There's a reason it's called being cool and being chill. And that means something that's very, very, very important for attraction. So if we water all of that down and we think about what do we really have control over, the answer is, but for height, and even there's leg surgery, you kind of have control over all of it. But what interests me, at least, is what part of all of that do you have control over during the date or the hangout itself? Because if it's not money, you're not going to make any money while you check your stock portfolio. You're like, oh, I'm up 50%. All right, drinks on the house. That's not how it works. You're not going to be able to increase your height on a date. It would be preposterous if she was like, this is a fun, like, super awesome date. Like, are you going to order food? And you're like, well, no, I'm trying to stay trim. And she's like, why? You're like, well, I'll continue to be a lean, attractive male for you, ma'am. She'd be like, what? You're not going to change your body fat marginally in a date? That's nonsense. You're not going to change your looks. What can you change? What do you have control over on the date itself? To me, it's two things. One is good conversation. You have a lot of control over conversation on a date, potentially infinite control. And the other thing is how you project yourself through that conversation, specifically in regards to your status. Because most status, as females find attractive, is inferred based on conversation interaction versus it being explicit. It's not something like hurt. You know, if she asks you what you do on a date and you're like, well, I own 57 Lamborghinis. She's like, okay, that's not really a job, but thanks. Like, it's probably not gonna hurt, especially how you say it. It's not gonna go against you. But look at that. I interrupted myself. How you say it is so important, because status is something that weaves through not only your explicit abilities, but your implicit abilities. Really, really quick example. If you're on a date and let's say you're really big and muscly, and she goes like, wow, you're really jacked, there are multiple ways you can respond to that. Now, you have the same status back in the real world as ever. There's nothing changing. You're still as jacked as you ever were. But how you respond to that tells her something very, very potentially different than in another way to respond to it. For example, just 2 examples of how to respond to it. One is you go, oh, yeah, thanks. No, I don't know. I ain't shit. I'm just trying to get bigger. You know, I'm just trying to make my mark in the sport, bodybuilding. I'm not that good. You know, I don't usually win. Sometimes I win, but like, I don't know. Just like, I'm trying. You know, I don't even feel big a lot of the times, but you know, you really shouldn't say that to me because she's like, what? Attraction just seeping out of her and going into a black hole. You're done.
Mm-hmm.
But if you treat that compliment as it was meant and from a position of high status, then you have a much better effect on the conversation. So if she's like, dude, you're pretty jacked, you go, oh my God, thanks. Stop it. I don't know. These big muscles. Thank you so much. Anyway, and you just go to the next part of the conversation. She's like, yes. Now she's not thinking any of this explicitly, but a deep evolutionary psych, she's like, all right, it's not his first time being complimented. He seems pretty confident, but also he's not cocky. He wasn't like, oh, thank you. Yes. Oh, well, you want to touch my arms? None of that. It's not his first rodeo. He is jacked for sure, and he knows he's jacked, but he's not cocky about it. Triple crown. You put off that kind of energy, and the next thing you're talking about, she's just got googly eyes, and then you're in, right? So, no, obviously not exactly, but even the literal status that you have, you can modify how she perceives it based on your interaction. What I'm trying to say with all this is interaction is absolutely king in this regard. And that it's difficult to overstate. It's also kind of nonsense because to the male mind, you know, again, input, output, very straightforward logic. You would think, okay, if a man is attractive, he's just kind of attractive, no matter what he says, no matter what he does. But that's really just not the case. It's very much the opposite of the case, where you could be rich, talented, super jacked and lean, but because you're kind of a to be around, you ain't getting any calls to go on any boats with anybody. And that's so, do you have anything to say about that, Bill? Is that like, you understand where I'm going with that? That's kind of it's a very different side of the coin. It seems like it's treated very differently.
So your ability to do well in social interactions and can ultimately express yourself is a multiplier to all the other categories. Ultimately, the power of your game personality, your speaking skills, is that it allows you to express your personality. Like, people will talk about, I think game's been portrayed in a lot of wrong ways, but one way you can see it is portraying yourself in the best way possible, right? There's a lot of different ways people can see you based off of what they can see. And that's the thing, is that if you can't show if you can't show your positive traits, a lot of them will, never be noticed. And I think that this whole sphere has gotten put into the wrong frame of mind, where everyone feels that you should just go on a date and, quote, be yourself, that you can't change yourself. You can't change anything about your personality or the way you speak or your social skills. And I think that social skills and interactions in general is something that you can absolutely improve it. And it's something that people have kind of swept under the rug, where they almost look down on you if you are trying to improve your social skills. But there's no difference between that and, say, trying to get good at sales. Sales is very much a formulaic. In fact, it's much more formulaic than dating, but it is a form of weaponized social skills.
Sure. You said something super interesting that actually I scripted together a few reminder notes to myself before this, and I literally, like, as I was going through the notes, you said exactly. I was like, "Is this guy screen sharing with me that I don't know about? Are you hacking me?" Because what I ended up saying is, you are essentially very intuitively, not explicitly, in, let's say, on a date interaction with a female, you're being scored, you're being graded. And the score is, let's say, 0 to 100. 100, she's literally like, "Dude, please, can we just pack this up and go to your place? I can't stand this anymore. Like, I'm just going to get naked in public if you don't stop me. There's going to be a crime." You're like, "Good God, waiter," right? And 0, she's like, "Listen, I'm going to walk away from the table. And if you follow me, I do have a weapon. I travel armed. It's in my purse. I'll shoot you to death. Never, ever talk to me again." So now that, now that we have that scale, right? Every part of the conversation and part of what she knows about you in other regards. Oh, like, your friend was in med school and recommended you. You're an engineer. Oh, high status. She doesn't get that explicitly from you, but she gets it from other places. All of these things, height, income, etc., they add up to a higher score. But here's the crazy thing: how you come off, some combination of your status portrayal and your personality, multiply, magnify those things. And it works in two ways. If you have a very high status frame, for however tall you are, or however not much money you make, or your face just was put, God was busy with other things when he made your face, right? He got back to doing good faces right after. You're going to score way out of your league, so to speak, if your status frame is strong and your personality is amenable to interaction. On the other hand, even if you have everything else going for you, status and personality still work like multipliers, but now they're fractional multipliers. They're dividers. So someone could look at you, and I've actually done this before. I've hanging around co-ed circles, new people in my life. This is a real thing. Like, there'll be a guy who's in the social circle. He's like 6'4", broad shoulders, handsome. And I'm like, I have a bunch of girlfriends in the group, and I'm like, "Hey, what about Brad?" Right? And they're like, "Nah, Brad, nah." And I'm like, "What? He looks like Superman. What are you doing?" It turns out that his status frame and his interaction are so awful that they're like, "I don't care that he's 6'4". And yeah, it'd be worse if he was 5'2", but like, who even looks down there anymore? His terrible frame, his terrible way of interacting with people, took all of his positive qualities and reduced them down to a tiny fraction of their size. And so this is really the whole purpose of this whole podcast, and hopefully if we do future podcasts, is to talk about this way of interacting with people. Putting your best foot forward isn't it's not summative. It's not an ad. It's not like you were scoring a 55, but then you added in status, and now you're at a 75. It's a multiplier. And a multiplier is a big, big deal. Huge, huge deal. Maybe that rant was to nowhere. What do you think about that? Is that am I over exaggerating the effect here? I think I'm selling it pretty decently. I don't know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that often when you see guys where people say, "Oh, she's out of his league," but they're together and she's genuinely into him, it usually comes down to how their status is and how well they portray themselves and how strongly they communicate.
Yep. Yep. One more thing I have to say about status, and this is a big deal, and this kind of sets us up for maybe talking more technically about what goes into high status mindset and things like that. The thing about status is it is insanely difficult to fake. It's possible to say the right things. Anyone can say stuff. It's very difficult to alter body language. It's way more difficult than that to alter facial language, facial cues. It's insanely difficult to alter the tonality of your voice. It's almost impossible to, on the fly, alter your organic reactions to things. One of the major, major ways in which women develop or not an attraction to males is watching very intuitively, very subconsciously, how they deal with the world. How does he talk to the waiter? How does he talk to that super jacked guy that just walked by the table and now we can both smell his cologne? How did he interact with that? How does he interact with me? It's so insanely difficult to fake all of that. So to that point, status is almost 100% something that lives in your head. And if you really feel in the true deep sense high status in your own heart, you project high status cues into everything. You can't help it. You can't help it. It's just is just a thing that happens. I get into a mood every now and again, usually at the totally inappropriate time, where like just one-liners come to me every fraction of a second. I can't stop. Is just like, where are you getting these? I don't know. It's just coming. This is here come the jokes. And in much the same way, if you truly embody a high status frame, it stinks all around you. It affects everything and everyone you interact with, really in a very positive way. There are ways to make it more positive and not, but it's something that, like you said earlier, no, you can't fake this stuff. You can't just say the stuff. So a lot of what we're going to be telling you guys is stuff not just to try on the hat and see how it feels, because that helps too, but also how to improve not only your outer life of how much money you make and how well you pick your clothes or all this other stuff, but also improving your deep mindset of what you really believe about yourself. Because if you think you are unequivocally the man in some deep non-egotistical sense, you're going to do real well for yourself in the dating community for whatever it is all the other factors get you. But if you have all the other factors lined up and you can even say the right things at the right times, most times, girls sniff that out sooner or later. And there's something up with Frank. I don't know. Frank gives me the vibe. I don't know. He seems fake. He's kind of creepy. You can't fake this stuff. So an examination of what it means to be high status is not just that. And it's not just, well, act like you're these things. It's to live that reality. It's similar to like rap battling and flow. If you feel aggressive and fluid, you're going to lay down fucking lines. If you're feeling like frigid and weird, there's no getting out of that, because it's the feeling that generates the rap lyrics, not the other way around. You could have memorized all your rap lyrics. You still won't come to you at the right time. And the flow is off. Something's different. So you have to live that high status energy, and it's just absolutely not going to happen overnight. It takes practice and practice and practice. But the really awesome thing is the practice makes you exponentially better at it, because you don't even know you could live in this world in your mind. And now it's going to be pretty comfortable. And you can practice this with and on any and every single thing that you ever see in your life. To your earlier point of, this is something you do. This is just someone who you are. The way you talk to the nurse when she's drawing your blood, the way you talk to the dental technician that gets your next appointment going, the way you talk to the delivery man when he brings you your Amazon package, all of that is practice for either default, whatever it is you have going for you, sometimes high status, sometimes low, no big deal, or chronically low status, or high status. And the more you practice and live in that high status mindset, the more, not only does it give you the powers to have better dates, but also it gives you the ability to really become a person who, for the love of God, just likes themselves better. Which, man, that's probably way more worthwhile than any date you'll go on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I like that. I think one of the big mindset shifts that guys should take away from listening to this is instead of thinking about approaching dating and relationships as something you do, but more as who you are.
Yes.
And I think that this is something where the pickup artists get wrong, is that they try and memorize lines, or ultimately they are trying to emulate the behaviors of a high value man. But what you want to do is become that high value man. You want to become that person, and that starts in belief. Believing yourself, believing in yourself is the first step, and you need to have it. And you can massively change how you are seen in the world by just believing it, having that mindset. And one takeaway that I like for people to try out is that if you feel like you aren't that ultimate version of yourself right now, like maybe you're a young guy, you're starting your business, or you're in school or something, is to borrow the value from the man that you are going to become one day. seeing yourself as that ultimate man that you are going to become and living as that guy because you will become him eventually.
That's deep. That takes something pretty special to believe if you're not used to believing in yourself. My first thought when you were saying that is, if I was young and you came from the future and told me, hey, Mike, you're going to be this famous rich person later, just start acting like it now, I'd be like, bullshit. Bullshit. You're just some guy from the future and you're lying to me. There's no way. Because, you'd have an iPhone to prove that you are, in fact, from the future. But, like, I'd be like, there's no way. There's no way. There's no way I can believe that now it's okay for me to act like I already won the whole thing. But if you can somehow act marginally more like that and do the deep work of feeling like that, that's the tough part, then, and I'm going to say this as politely as I can, and I don't mean this in a negative way, the vast majority of women simply can't tell. And to their credit, they can tell. And you really are high status in your mind. All of those, how you look and body language and tone of voice, they're not trying to ascertain if you're high status in the world. What the hell does that mean? We're at an Italian restaurant in Metro Chicago. There's no world. Nobody's coming after us. There's no chieftain over there with an axe to throw at me. This is crazy. She's trying to figure out if you're alpha in your own head. And if you are, you can do no wrong in some sense of emotional communicative language. And if you're faking it, man, it's just a matter of time. And usually that time is like some fraction of a second until she's like, nope, that guy's not it. And you're like, I had all these lines saved up. That it's deep. I think it's pretty deep. So we've been talking about like high status and stuff for a while. Is it okay if I shoot, like, I think I have like 7 things written down as examples of how high status men typically think and act? And maybe you can critique these or throw in some more, because I'm sure I missed like a trillion of them. Is that okay?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. All right. So we've been talking for a while, and we're like, high status. It's important to be high status. And if I was listening to this podcast, I didn't know anything I know now, I'd be like, all right, like, what does that mean? I'm sorry. Like, how do high status? Like, obviously, I can't just like throw a spear at the waiter at the restaurant. So that Paleolithic stuff is out. There's a couple things. There's many, many, many. But these are, to me, some things just were kind of top of mind. And it's not the specific things that are super important, although the specific things are pretty important. It's what they indicate about your deeper relations and frame. How do you relate to the world? How do you relate to other females? How do you relate to your other males? And most importantly, how do you relate to yourself? So the first one I have is the mindset of sexual abundance. This is juxtaposed with a mindset of sexual scarcity. A high status male, and I like to use this little funny make-believe situation as kind of conveying to people what it means to think and act like a person with sexual abundance. Here's how I portray it. There are 2 extreme ways of going on a date with a girl that you like, 2 extreme sides of a behavior. Sexual scarcity behavior and mindset, which is going to flow through your every interaction, is you don't get laid regularly. You want women that you are just not attractive enough to attract. You desperately want to have sexual things happen to you with this girl. And if you don't get them, it'll make you very, very sad. You need this thing. It's like a loaf of bread for a starving child. Like, you will claw through other people to get this thing. That might even be true, but it is insanely unattractive. What is the opposite mindset? One of sexual abundance. The way I like to do the story for this is, you show up to the date and you're tired. Why are you tired? She might even ask, obviously this is all a joke, she might even ask, why are the bags under your eyes? It's because at your home, which is a mansion, all of the world's most gorgeous women just can't wait to get in. And you let in like 10 of them at a time because you're so damn beautiful. If you show up to a date and basically you're acting like you just got away from the models for an hour, you're like, hey, okay, is there any supermodels around? Okay, hey, my name is Mike, how are you? And she's like, what's this all about? You're like, Nothing, no worries. You just kick the date. Obviously, you wouldn't do something crazy like that, but that mindset, you're just glad you don't have to try to seduce her or something like that. You're like, can I just be me? Can we just have a chill date? And she's like, of course. I thought that's what this was. Perfect. Beautiful. Boom. Because intuitively, she's looking for the tribal elder, the tribal chieftain, the leader that actually does have sex anytime he wants with as many women as he wants. That's the guy she wants. Not explicitly. That's disgusting. Implicitly, it is what is attractive. Correct me, and add and subtract. What did I get wrong?
Yeah, I think that is huge. It's people call it pre-selection, where it's the guy who has other girls coming after him. I think that
BTS.
is it says a lot about who you are to other girls, where the girl doesn't need to think about it because he's already been chosen by other people. It's the whole this applies in psychology in general, right? It's like you want to go into the restaurant that's full of people, or you
Mm-hmm.
want to go to the movie that everyone's watching. Because I
Mm-hmm.
mean, if you want to go to the the place that has the most Google reviews, five stars, and we believe other people's opinions, and it allows us to shortcut our own decision making. So I think that is something that's huge. That is something that it's not easy to fake, but you can also, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to go about it in terms of how you manifest that, but the
Yes.
core is not being thirsty.
Yes, exactly. I was my wife and I were watching one of these like reality dating shows where they all live in the same house or whatever and like cross date each other. And this one dude, they pick generally everyone's very attractive, males and females, and generally most of the guys have really good game, at least decent game. Dude, one dude couldn't take his eyes during a conversation off this girl's chest. And I was like, turned to my wife, I'm like, what is this, eighth grade? What are you, crazy? It never even phased you. If she can phase you, maybe she's out of your league. Maybe she'll feel that energy. If you're not even there to do anything sexual, as far as you can tell, and if sex comes up, you're kind of like blasé about it, or like, yeah, that's a thing. Then she's like, what is this? I usually have an ability to get people sexually interested in me. Why won't he bite? Is it because he thinks he's not even attractive enough to me? Well, all the other signs don't make sense. It's because he's out of my league. But what happens when a girl thinks you're out of her league? I mean, this is like vulture type shit happens where he's clawing on for dear life. That's how you get like, what is that, like a stage 3 clinger or whatever. She's like, oh my God. Like imagine a girl found out you were like an IMDb wealthy super Hollywood actor halfway through a date. She'd be like, oh my God, Betsy, don't mess this up. Just powder her face in the bathroom. It's a big, big deal. There are ways, I'm sure we'll get to later, which you can emphasize through your behaviors or others. But an easy one, super easy, actionable point is when you're on a date with a girl and she's very physically attractive, don't stare at her body parts. That is telling her that you're first time seeing an attractive woman.
Yeah, I like that. I think that of course the first question that comes up is that for a lot of guys, they aren't in a place where they have 20 supermodels lined up at their mansion every night.
Sure.
And I think that first of all, I think the key is not being so focused on beauty. Yeah, as you mentioned, where ultimately the way I like to think about it now is that you want to think about going on dates as you evaluating the girl. You are trying to decide if this person is going to be worth spending more time with. You have to see yourself again. You want to put yourself as that ultimate high value man you're going to become. Your time is very valuable. If you think about it, just imagine you're like Elon Musk at age 20. How much is his time worth every hour, right? So the fact that you are spending an evening going on a date with this girl when you could be doing so many other things, you need to decide whether this girl is worth spending more time. And a lot of this is going to come down ultimately to things that are beyond looks. Think about how I think just understanding this is just an abundance mindset in general. Look around you. Like there are millions of beautiful women around the world, and there are going to be so many other people that you can meet. The ocean is filled with fish, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that's something that guys get wrong, where they go on one date with a girl and they're like, oh my goodness, this is the only one I'm ever gonna have a chance with.
Yeah.
But instead, seeing just one really good thing is next time you're downtown or in a busy place, just walk down the street and just look at how many beautiful people are around. There is a huge abundance, and the fact that you're able to, walk up and talk to anyone you want, you have that access. And the other thing is that, just getting used to talking to, beautiful girls in general. Obviously, this will come up later, but in
Oh, yeah.
just treating them as normal people. Ultimately, this is going to make them feel a lot more comfortable, and it'll help you in terms of all those other interactions as well.
Man, I could riff a long time on all that. I'm sure we'll get to it at some point later, but just real quick, two things. One is I used to get really thrown off by very objectively attractive women. It's a shock, right? Like, whoa, and you're supposed to be yourself, but you're like, oh my God, totally. To your point about exposing yourself to interactions, a couple of arcs in my life so far have helped me in that regard. But probably one of the biggest was the fact that for the RP YouTube channel, I get an opportunity to train kind of an infinite number of bikini pros and female wellness pros. I mean, these are people who are like, they're beyond hot. They're like absurd looking in the best possible way. You're like, somebody drew you. That's not a real person. There's no way you're human. And enough of being around them does two things. One, I just think you're not gonna shock me with it anymore. I'm sorry. Like you top 10 in the Olympia. Congratulations. We trained Miss Olympia twice. One bikini Olympia. Slow clap. You look great. You look great. But um, adaptation is a huge thing in humans. Hedonic adaptation. You only get shocked, looking at Catherine Zeta-Jones a few times, and then later you're like, that's Catherine Zeta-Jones. Like her family doesn't get shocked looking at her. Like, her ex-boyfriend doesn't get shocked looking at her. So that's a big thing. Another thing is, you said something super, super wise. You're like, they're something effective, like, well, they're just like normal people. Folks, I'm here to tell you that the most attractive women in the world, and I don't want to offend anyone, are really, really normal. And I don't mean like average. I mean like flawed and human. And they have great, great upsides and terrible, awful downsides. You're like, but I thought you were a flawless Barbie. No way. For every, what is it, for every super hot girl, there's a guy that's tired of listening to her or whatever. That's awful, and that's not true. But these are real humans. And another thing that I have to mention here in this regard, since we're talking about the specific issue, is there is an assumption that I think a lot of guys make that that girl who's ultra hot, who you're intimidated by, feels her own ultra hot immortality energy. I have found that largely not to be the case. You start talking at a deeper level of attractive girls, and it turns out they're in the rat race to find out who the hell they even are as humans. And you're like, do you think you're attractive? And they're like, not usually. And you're like, oh my God, why was I sweating you? And you're not even sweating yourself. So there's a ton, of course, to be said here, but eventually all these things link up to get you into that mindset of abundance. And there's a different way to say abundance. It's a lack of a high pressure desire for things to happen. Things can happen on this date. It'll go amazing. Wouldn't that be great? But also, if we just had a great conversation for an hour, I paid for our drinks and I left, it would also be cool. I'm gonna be all right. My life is great outside of here. I might have another one of you tomorrow, and the day after that. And I don't even want that. I'm gonna stay at home and play PlayStation because I'm too busy and I got girls texting me. That's the reality that we want to get to. Is you went even more extreme. You said you're interviewing her. You're examining her. And that's a totally great frame. Some people can put that hat on better than others, but at the very least, it's just two human beings talking to each other. All of that high pressure, oh my God, she's so hot. The more you can get used to that, the better the interactions will go, because that pressure and insanity of, oh my God, don't say anything wrong, she's the hottest girl you've ever been with, that's not helpful. Is it okay for me to say it's not helpful? Is that accurate? Is it helpful in a certain way? I don't want to overstep here.
Yeah, and I like that how you alluded to abundance being more than just about other dates, where if you have a rich and exciting life, you have a lot of things to do, you can have that abundance mindset even if you aren't going on dates. I think the key thing about talking about abundance here is it isn't about actually having a lot of sex, but it's having the ability to.
Sure.
You don't need to be, yeah, like going through all those supermodels, but just having the supermodels at your door is enough. And here's a story about our boy Brad. He goes on a date. Well, he meets this girl, a Russian girl, and they
It's all
go back
Russians and
to
Ukrainians, man. We got World War III over here.
God. They go to his apartment, and it's late at night. They met at the club, and they're making out, and she starts playing some games with him, saying a couple things, making a couple of jokes that he doesn't like. And at this point, Brad has a full and busy life. He's got a lot of things to get done the next day. It's late, and he just gets up and says, "You know what? I'm not down to play games. Let me call you an Uber." He picks up his phone and literally opens the Uber app, but it isn't working. And at that point she pulls him back down on the couch, and where things go from there.
Sure.
Ultimately, Brad had that abundance mindset, but it didn't necessarily have to come from having dates, but just because he is has such a rich and exciting life.
Yes. My next 5 minutes will be better spent doing anything else other than convincing you to sleep with me. So if you want the door, see ya. And that's a different kind of vibe. And girls very rarely get that vibe. They usually get the desperation vibe. And well, that's neither attractive nor helps anyone. All right. Next one. Next thing up. Under high status men typically think and act like this versus like this. High status men typically have a relaxed demeanor versus a neurotic demeanor. A neurotic demeanor is one in which you don't feel safe. You don't feel safe, either emotionally safe, verbally safe, physically safe, whatever kind of safety. It's just not abundant. Think of a person, think of like the white woman in every horror movie that's got the knife and the zombies behind the door. And she's like, that's not high status. That is not attractive. That is, she's going to die soon. Like, it's the lowest possible status that you can ever assume. A relaxed demeanor is something that would happen if, you had a pro MMA fighter standing in line at a Walmart, and the person in front of him, who was, let's say, 5'1", 140 pounds, and obviously untrained and out of shape, started getting like real loud and verbal and physical with the cashier. Like, you look at everyone's face, and everyone's kind of like, like when there's a physical confrontation, everyone kind of gets like, oh, kind of thing. You look at the MMA guy's face, is just like this. It's just like a Tuesday. And at some point, he's going to be like, oh, there's a guy yelling at me. Like, hey, buddy, take it easy, man. You're not going to razzle him. Why? How would you frazzle that guy? What are you going to do? You got nothing. You got no arsenal. He doesn't see you as a threat. If you are a kind of male that perceives threats everywhere, you are not exuding that earlier referenced, I've won most of my physical confrontations recently in my life kind of energy. A relaxed demeanor gives you 2 bonus points, maybe 3. First bonus point, it illustrates that you're not fearing for anything and you're confident. That's nice. Another thing is that a relaxed demeanor makes her feel safer around you, because if you're chill, vibes travel, and she's chill too. And kind of 2B or 3 is, once you set that relaxed tone, not only is she feeling safer, but she's more likely to be very interactive verbally. Bill, have you ever tried to talk to someone who seems really on edge, but you're trying to have a relaxed conversation? It doesn't play.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're super on edge on a date, you're really worried about saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing, she's really way too hot for me. It's the opposite of having the relaxed demeanor, which of course comes from that deeper status idea of abundance, and the deeper status idea of the fact that, like, what am I supposed to be sweating something? I don't know about this. And interestingly enough, this is something that I noticed in myself when I was younger, middle school, high school. I have an older sister, 2 years older than me. And when I was growing up, I met tons of her friends. Almost all of them were girls. And to Brad's story, they're mostly Russian and Ukrainian, hilariously. I never looked at them as sexual interests, because for me, they were 2 years older. When I was 8, they were 10. It was just totally out of my realm. I looked at them as like buddy friends, and I was insanely relaxed around them. And they were like, "Oh my God, you're so funny, blah blah blah, you're so great." That's all I heard. When I got to my own grades in school, to the girls around my age, specifically in my grade in middle school, high school, I was almost never relaxed because I felt this insane pressure of like, oh my God, these are girls that you could like do girl things with. Holy crap. And then it was total neuroticism 100% of the time. And no surprise, your boy stayed dry all the way through school, baby, untouched. Luckily, no STDs, but luckily, unluckily, no anything else. So what do you think about that relaxed versus neurotic demeanor? What more can we say about that?
That's massive. I think that this speaks a lot to how intuitive girls are at picking up on a man's status, where a lot is conveyed within the first 5 seconds of her meeting you and even just seeing you across the room. If you think about it, you know, let's tell the story of Brad. He's, going out at a party and he's vibing with his friends and he has a whole bunch of, let's say, beautiful girls around him. And this girl at one point comes up to him and just says, "Can I kiss you?" Without even meeting him.
Mm-hmm.
His status is so high, just a lot of it was just from the way that she saw him interacting and holding himself across the room. And you can see a lot of these being portrayed by Dr. Micah right now. If you're watching this on YouTube and if you're on the podcast, make sure you pull up the video. We can go through these body language cues from head to toe. I think, starting from the top, having relaxed. So this is going to be some actionable advice for you boys.
I
Relaxing your
love it.
eyebrows is a very powerful way to demonstrate this kind of relaxed demeanor. The way you hold your eyes. So as Mike was demonstrating earlier, when you're looking around with really wide, shifty eyes, you are portraying the animal who's being hunted, right?
Yes.
Think about this as you are being the hunter. You're the lion. You're not the antelope. And a lot of this will translate into almost biological terms at this point. The way that you express with your face. So when you have very, very exaggerated reactions to things, someone makes a small joke and you like crack out laughing, or someone makes, a small gesture of conflict towards you and you're
Mm-hmm.
cowering to them, that says a lot about your status in the group. And then, the way you hold your shoulders and your arms, having very open body language, power posing ties into this, where when you have very open body language, you're taking up a lot of space. You're conveying to the world that you're very comfortable taking up space and being that
Yes.
high presence figure. And
You're
then,
leaving your limbs and neck unprotected if you think about it. Think about the feeling you get and the body posture you get if you have to go down a thin hallway and there's a pretty well trained but not so well trained lion in the hallway. Bro, you're going to walk by like this, right? Exactly like this. You're going to have your fists and fingers curled in because he may snap at you. You're going to have your knees together. You're going to have your spine kind of crunched over. You're going to get a diminutive posture. That is the pinnacle of neurotic demeanor. Whereas think about how you are on your couch at night when it's just you and Dragon Ball Z episodes. You're sprawled out. You got nothing to worry about. You're like, say, "Hey, are your fingers okay right now?" You're like, "Well, sorry, what do you mean? Of course they're okay." Like, "Well, aren't you worried they'll get bitten off by lions?" You're like, "No." So when you see someone on a date that's doing this kind of posture, they're scared of lions in some deep evolutionary sense. And that's not the frame that's going to get her relaxed, first of all. And second of all, indicate to her that you're a pretty high status person.
mhm, yeah, I love it. Yeah, I think that sums it up pretty well. I think couching these things in terms of being a fighter, as you said, and as you are, makes a lot of sense.
That helps. That's another thing that helps a lot is you get beat up enough in jiu-jitsu or kickboxing. It's just very difficult to make you like throw you off in normal situations. Like, what's the worst that can happen? This guy's going to beat me up. I already had that a bunch of times. One thing to say though, and Bill, I really do wonder if I'm wrong about this, but we've been hinting at this dichotomy between loser, defeated, victim, prey frame and winner, superlative alpha male predator frame. I think there's tons there, absolutely. But on a date, one thing I like to portray as a mindset or kind of exude energy is that of, how do I best say this? Let's say you're an immortal superhero and you walk into a shopping mall and there's a gunfight between like the good guy rebels and the bad guy empire people. And you walk right up to a girl who's cowering under an escalator. And you're like, hey, my name's Bill. And she's like, aren't you going to duck? And you're like, oh, why would I duck? And she's like, there's bullets. You're like, oh, these? And you catch one and you're like, oh, it doesn't mean anything to me. When you're on a date, the ultimate alpha move is to be completely unconcerned with conflict and predator and prey natures. You don't have to look at a woman like an alpha lion, examining her, sniffing her, looking to make sure she's okay, looking at everyone else like a fucking predator. You can. Some women are into that sort of thing. Like, I want the strong, powerful man. There's my Russian girl impression of the day. But there's also a frame you can take, which is not neurotic, but it's not alpha and aggressive. It's, this isn't really my fight. I'm just here to have a good time. And if you take that frame, that can really help relax you, because there's nothing to win or lose here. And I think that, quoting myself from 3 seconds ago, there's nothing to win or lose here, as a huge context arranger for a date, I think is a big deal. Tell me I'm wrong about that.
I like it. I think that it comes down to the semantics of it. The way I see it is that when you are the lion, when a rat comes up and tries to bite you at your ankles, you are completely unperturbed. And that's the way I see the predator frame, where it can coexist with exactly what you're saying. I think that people get the whole alpha thing wrong nowadays, where it's become this aggressive, like, attacker, antagonistic person who goes around like trying to bump chests with every other male in the room. But ultimately, if you think about it, and I think I still love the way my dad taught me this when he was like a long time ago, but he would always say that, Bill, you always want to speak softly and carry a big stick.
Mm-hmm.
And girls will say this. We've interviewed over 1,000 girls in this last year, and
that's awesome. Holy crap.
A lot of them will say that the most attractive quality in man is quiet confidence. When you have the biggest gun or the biggest stick in the room, you don't need to be going around being confrontational with people. And I think that's exactly the mindset you were describing.
Yes. And another thing is, the alpha male doesn't go around challenging people. That's the beta male's job. The alpha male's already the winner. He doesn't take any fights unless they come to him. So the alpha male just wants to get along with everyone and be cool and just pump up all the females. If you want to bring him that energy, that's technically beta energy. Now, if you win an interaction, you become alpha. Congratulations. But yeah, it's less about scared versus aggressive. It's much more about scared versus I got nothing to be scared of. And that I think is a big deal. All right, next one. How much more time we got? Time for one more?
Yeah, man.
I don't know. I wrote this down. I don't know how deep it goes or how true it is. But to me, if you have that high status mentality, you are almost, if not totally, impossible to offend in conversation. Whereas if you have a very low status mentality, you're profoundly easy to offend. I don't know in what context this is helpful advice. Most dates maybe don't give you an opportunity to get offended, but people will find opportunities to be offended one way or another. But let's say a girl tells you, hey, like, what brand is that shirt you're wearing? And you're like, oh, like Nike or whatever. And she's like, oh yeah, like I like Adidas better. I think that shirt's not that great. There are a few ways you can interact with that. If you get offended, not good. Not good. Why? Again, coming back to the status discussion, you are so desperately clinging on to whatever status you think you have that a mere mention of the fact that your shirt's not the greatest shirt in the world is throwing you into chaos. Somebody just took your golden ticket from the fucking Titanic and now you're swimming in the ice. On the other hand, if you're impossible to offend, a girl may intuit, not explicitly but implicitly, that like, wow, like, what does this guy have in reserve that I can't seem to shake? And girls, especially if you're confident, if you're not confident, they just don't even notice you, / they're really nice to you in that sisterly way, you're for sure not getting laid. But if you're confident, some girls will test you. And they might not say very kind things to you, and they're looking to see if you get offended and thrown off or not. And if you say something like, well, it's an expensive shirt, I like it. Okay, that's not ideal. But if you say something like, oh, that's what you think, that's cool, yeah, word up. Next conversation topic. Or you say, yeah, it's not the greatest shirt in the world, but I'm not like a fashion expert. Anything to illustrate that you're just not thrown off. And if you're deeply thrown off, fuck, is that hard to fake? Forget about it. She's going to be able to tell. But if you actually just don't care and you're like, oh, because she thinks I have a not nice shirt. Okay, dope. Adidas it is. You could be like, oh, interesting. So what do you think about like the Adidas shirts that makes them as a textural quality? Is it like the design? And all of a sudden she's like, wow, I guess you passed the test because you don't care. Bill, is that aligning with that whole status situation, or is that just a random off-topic thing?
Yeah, I think the way I like to couch that is that you want to be non-reactive. Like you don't get thrown off by things, which is what you're saying in terms of not getting offended by things. There is a difference between, the guy who he still has very high standards and he won't accept certain behaviors, like our story from Brad where the girl's playing games with him and he said, well, it's time for your Uber. The thing is, he never blew up. He never got angry. He never raised his voice. And that is something that a man should never do, I believe. But he also had very high expectations and standards. So I think that there's a way for that to coexist. And exactly, girls are going to do this all the time. They're always going to be testing you. This is something that it is within their nature. They need to be reassured that they are with the right guy. And if you can't hold up to those tests, then she's going to lose that confidence. And ultimately, the first step is being non-reactive. If you are getting upset when she takes that little jab at your Nike shirt versus you play it off and say, oh, well, I got offered a bunch of brand sponsorships from Adidas. I was supposed to be their flagship model, but, I decided to go Nike instead. Being able to play it off, especially if you can do it in a funny, high value way, that will actually make her more attracted to you.
Yes. Okay. I got to get one more in here before we break it off for another episode. But this is so related, and you really just brought it up because these two, I guess, are in retrospect really related. My next one was high status men don't bend their values and commitments under pressure. Low status men will bend their values and commitments and position stands as needed in order to get whatever it is they think comes next. So I remember I got the balls finally to ask a girl on a date. I called her. I wanted to take her to the movies. And I told her, hey, I'd like to see this movie with you. And she was like, that's kind of like a movie I'm not into. And I still want to go back in time and shoot myself in the balls for this one. But I was like, oh, look, well, let's go see what movie you want to see. I'm sorry. What? Clearly, she never went on the date with me, and I did not deserve a date. The high status man knows what's important to him. And you're not going to change his mind overnight. Now, he's totally amenable to logical discussion and exchange of ideas, but you're not going to be able to bend them one way or another. So for example, if a girl says, she's on a date and she's like, well, I'm vegan and I think that's really important. If you start into this thing where like, yeah, it's all bullshit, by the way, you're like, yeah, I've been really thinking about going vegan, and you change what you order at the restaurant because you kind of want to gel with her, it's a dead end. you can totally be like, hey, like respect. I mean, like animal rights are super important. And then you order whatever the hell you're going to order anyway. And like if she's vegan crazy enough to walk out on you on a date for ordering a steak at a steakhouse, dope. Like you just save yourself a completely insane person, thank God. But that fact that you were like, hey, listen, that sounds really cool. And she's like, are you vegan? You're like, no, no, I'm not. But I have a ton of respect for vegans. I can't change him. I can't just whirl him around my finger. Must be because he has something else going on. Very, very related concepts, that inability to offend you, and at the same time, inability to get you, like, oh, here's a great one. Here's a great one. You're in a group of people, and one of your friends is trying to kind of like, there's a new girl, and she's like, hey, get this girl, right? And the girl's blonde. And one of your friends is like, don't you usually like redheads? And you're like, yep. And the blonde girl's like, really? And you're like, uh-huh. And she's like, you don't usually like blondes? Now, low value thing to say would be like, well, not usually, but you sure are pretty. Or, well, no, blondes are great. Come on, Frank, shut up. I like blondes plenty. Don't. No. You look her right in the eye and you go, yeah, redheads are my jam typically. And just stare at her. What the hell is she going to do? She's melting at this point. She's done. You ain't her. Like, that ain't you. You're not even on my level to get at this shit. Now, she may take it in a way that's like, oh, okay, I don't need him. Fine, fuck. You got 15 other girls to fucking worry about. But she's probably going to be like, wow, interesting. Now, I'm blonde and he likes redheads. Now, if I really try with this guy, maybe I can get him to break the mold a little bit. So that's another way I think that expresses itself. What do you think about that, Bill?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to unpack it. I think that there is a book called The Way of the Superior Man that is ultimately an embodiment of what it means to be masculine. And I think the way they couch it is that as a man, you are the rock cliff. You are immovable object. You will not be swayed, right? Where you hold true to yourself. And I think that is a great way to think about what it is to be masculine, is to have that strength in yourself. And what you were saying earlier about the girl, when she says that, oh yeah, like you're into redheads, but you liked me. If you think about it, when you are honest about what you want and you are honest about your opinions, it actually does a double whammy where it makes you appear honest and genuine, and you are not motivated by just sex. Like, you're not trying to cater to her. So that makes you higher value in that sense. And the other thing is, if she manages to win you over, it becomes even more of a prize where you now, well, I mean, I guess I got it. I got him. Like, even though he likes redheads and I'm blonde, it worked. And I actually think that it will even strengthen your connection further beyond that, because it's like now you have a story. You're like, hey, normally I like redheads, but this blonde girl just had something to her that I liked that was different.
Yes. Yes, because people who marry and have children based on hair color are just totally insane. But people who can laugh about a story of, well, I actually wasn't really into blondes, but your mom's really special. That plays real well in a deep and true sense. A lot of the ways that you would think about how do I interact with a woman on a date is in many ways similar to how you would think about it. Well, if she was my wife, how would I interact with my wife? You're going to be chill. You're going to be conversational. You're going to stand your ground. You're going to dig at her a little bit. You're not going to have like some kind of attempt to impress her like crazy. Sexual abundance. I mean, Jesus Christ, you've had sex with 1,000 times already. Who cares? Like, it's not like you don't even have to ask for it anymore. That no pressure situation fits really well, and also illustrates your long-term deeper values. Because if you're like a sexually crazed liar that will tell women anything they want to hear in order to get in, they have really good ways of detecting that sort of thing. And if you change your opinions on stuff, like, like, oh, I heard you're a Lamborghini guy. And you're like, well, yeah, I like Lambos. What do you like? And she's like, Bugattis. And you're like, oh my God, I love Bugattis. Like, that really? Here's the thing. Do you really like Bugattis more than Lambos? Or are you just lying to her to get laid? Folks, women have the lying to me to get laid detector. You cannot dream of how advanced it is. Because again, it reads everything. It reads the scent of pheromones in the air, every facial expression, every body movement, every tone of voice. If you are the world's best liar, have fun. You're going to get laid a lot. If you're anything less than that, you are going to stumble and fall. I didn't even have honesty on this list, but that's a big, huge one. A deep level of honesty with yourself and with other people. So we're, like if she's like, "Do you like this outfit on me?" You'd be like, "I think it looks nice." Be like, "What do you really think?" Like, "I mean, it's not my favorite outfit." That is a much better thing to say on a date than, "Oh my God, it's the best." But she can tell you're lying. No?
Yeah, absolutely. The way I think about it is that this ties back into our status conversation. If you think about that high status man, think about you being the king of the empire, right?
Hmm?
You have all these women trying to come after you. If you were trying to go on a date with a girl, you would be searching for reasons for why you wouldn't want to spend more time with her, because you are such a high value person compared to, the rest of the world. So I actually think that it is very natural that you would want to call out any differences that you have, and even maybe making fun about it, saying like, "Oh, I guess you're blonde." So, but like actually, but like you can do it in a joking way, right?
Yes, of course.
And even just making it just like a game, just making some fun out of it and being playful. I think teasing in that way is a very, very powerful skill to be able to use. And it helps you in terms of your own screening. Like, I think that as a guy, you should be trying to actively think about reasons why you wouldn't want to be spending more time with this girl.
Yeah, that's deep. That it's actually illustrates a huge irony and something I've observed for a long time. There have been a few situations in my life, and I'm sure many folks can relate to this. And Bill, I'm sure you can relate to this like crazy. Um, it doesn't happen to me often, but nonetheless, a few times it's happened. There's a girl, let's say she's in your friends group or in your school or in your community, whatever, and you know her, and she likes you, and you don't like her, not in that way. All of a sudden, because you don't like her, every single thing you do in regards to her, every interaction, you have bulletproof infinity game, and she just likes you more. She's like, "Hey, do you want to hang out?" You're like, "Hey, I'm busy. Can I text you next week?" And she's like, "Yes." And she's thinking, "Oh my God, he's so busy, he's so high value." And you're like, "Please, Jesus God, forget about I ever said text. I'm such a pussy. I should have just said no." If you are truly in the frame of, okay, who's next? Who's next? This is nice, but who's next? That you almost can't lose level of attractiveness exudes from you. First of all, how fucked up is that? How backwards is that? But second of all, it's a real thing to illustrate the idea that, yeah, that frame, if you can sit with it for a little bit, of, this is my first date, this is my last date, and I'm looking for something deep and special. I'm not looking for redheads and blondes. And any amount of time that you rack up enough negative points in my book on this date that I spend with you is time spent too much. And I was like, "I'm pretty interested in you, but not so interested, and you got to give me something." If you have that mentality, then you almost can't do wrong. Everything about you will align to exude it. But if you have the opposite mentality of super scarcity and super liking the girl and, "Oh God, please, I hope this works," then you're giving off all the wrong signs. Bill, have you ever been in a situation where you like actively trying to turn a girl down, and because you're doing that, she just keeps coming at you, and you're like, "Okay, I gotta like hack the matrix and pretend I love her," or something like that? You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Yeah, man. Oh, you know how it is. But yeah, I think maybe this is one to wrap up on. But I
Yes.
think that this ultimately ties down to a much deeper message that we're going to be delivering, and that is that a lot of this comes down to more than just dating. And I think that when you adopt the mindset that you have so much more to your life and you have big goals, big aspirations, you have dreams that you're trying to accomplish, and that you'll realize that the girl isn't the ultimate goal. When you reframe your mind in that way, you will then naturally be able to adopt this type of thinking where like, yeah, I have a lot of other things I got to do. So, I mean, if this isn't working, then let's not spend more time on it.
Yeah. It's easy to put on that hat when it's true. It's much more difficult to try on that hat when it's not remotely true. If your number one priority is I gotta get this date to go well, it's gonna be tough. If your number one priority is like I had to make sure that experiment in my chemistry lab works out so I can get the A+ in my class. Like, she's like, damn, dude, this guy's got something on his mind, man. He's working on something. And he's attentive enough to me, but there's something deeper about him. And if a girl can intuit there's something deeper of value about you because you feel like there's something deeper in value about you and what you're doing, the probability that good things will happen increases. I'm sorry.
Love it. So yeah, that was a great conversation. I think that there's going to be stuff of a lot of interest to people out there. So where can people find you, Mike?
Oh, good. Got to find out. Well, if you want fitness stuff, RP Strength on YouTube is where to go. You'll see plenty of my ugly face there. Click on the face and you'll get info. If you want more like man-directed life advice, kind of philosophy stuff and how to act like a human being in a civilized world, then Mike Israetel Making Progress is the YouTube channel. Again, a picture of my face, but more like only 50 or so, or I guess we're 30-something, 40-something videos. Each of them are like an hour long, and they're about sort of big, hard-hitting topics. And some of them are under the topic of kind of, like how to deal with criticism, how to advance your career, and a lot of stuff that I think people have heard people say is important, but maybe haven't given them a little bit more deep advice about. So that's where I can be found.
Love it. Some Dr. Mike rants. So
Yeah.
anyways, till next time, thanks for being on the show, Mike.
Thank you so much.